What would you do if you saw a woman of color, around 50, dressed simply in an old coat, walk into the lobby of a luxury hotel, only to be kicked out in front of everyone, just because she didn't look like a VIP? Would you stand there silently watching it happen? Or would you ask yourself, who's really the one that doesn't belong here? This isn't just a story about a woman being humiliated in a place where she should have been welcomed. It's a story about a twist that made an entire hotel hold its breath, about power that doesn't wear a suit, and about a system forced to bow to the very person it just dismissed. You're about to witness what happens when the woman they threw out turns out to be the one who built the entire place. It all began with silence. Not the comforting kind, but the kind that settles over a room like a cold mist, seen by all, named by none. A silence not born of peace, but of judgment. And it was this very silence that hung thick over the grand lobby of Solara Bay Resort, a place renowned for its coastal opulence, champagne-soaked brunches, and a clientele who believed they had earned the right to be smiled at and served, simply because they knew how to pick expensive shoes. The woman entered through the revolving doors without a sound, without a scene. She didn't have an assistant, no designer handbag, no Versace sunglasses or Dior dress. She wore a plain black blouse tucked neatly into dark jeans, her hair tied in a low bun, and scuffed white sneakers dulled by the dust of travel. There was nothing luxurious about her, but there was nothing bowed about her either. Her presence didn't demand attention, but oddly, it made the entire space miss a beat, like the hotel's rhythm had been interrupted by a breath that didn't belong. Behind the reception desk, two employees, Travis Klein and Amber Wells, looked up almost in sync. Travis, the resort manager in his 40s, had a jutting chin and eyes that naturally distrusted. Amber, a polished receptionist with blonde hair and a tight bun, had a stare as sharp as a blade, scanning the stranger from head to toe before returning to her monitor. No one greeted the woman. No one asked what she needed. They simply watched, as if she were a riddle to be solved, or worse, a problem about to happen. "I have a reservation," the woman said. Her voice was even, neither loud nor soft, rushed nor hesitant. "The top suite, it's under the name Monroe." Travis squinted. "Monroe?" he repeated as if checking whether he'd heard right. "That's our most exclusive suite, ma'am. Are you sure you're in the right place?" She didn't flinch, didn't smile, didn't express surprise. She pulled a slim leather wallet from her pocket, took out an ID and a sleek black metal credit card. She placed them on the marble countertop, calm, firm, and deliberate. Amber glanced at the card, raised an eyebrow, and reached discreetly under the desk to press a button. A soft click echoed beneath the wood. She whispered something into the internal mic, not loud enough to hear, but enough to chill the air. Travis picked up the card between two fingers, as if afraid to dirty himself. "This card looks unusual," he muttered, holding it up beneath the chandelier light. "We've had a few cases like this. People forge, impersonate, then vanish when the bank flags it. I'm sure you understand." The woman, Danielle Monroe, stood motionless. Not a blink, no defensiveness. Her gaze, warm yet ice-cold, locked onto his. A few steps away, a young man named Brian Cho, a travel vlogger from San Diego, had just pulled out his phone to record. He had already captured the morning pool footage, but what he was witnessing now felt more real than anything he'd ever posted. "Start filming again," he whispered to his companion, loud enough for the mic to catch. Amber looked up. "We'll need to verify the card with the bank," she said. "In the meantime, please wait in the seating area outside." Danielle didn't look away from Travis. "I have a confirmed reservation," she said, enunciating each word, "and I'd like to check in now." Travis signaled for Miguel Reyes, a young security guard, to approach. His tone had the confidence of someone used to giving orders. "You'll need to leave the lobby area while we sort this out. We can't allow anyone in with a counterfeit card." Danielle replied simply, "You're making a serious mistake." Amber glanced at Travis, then picked up the card and handed it to Miguel. "Lock it in the safe." Miguel hesitated but obeyed. He opened a small compartment behind the desk, placed the black card inside, and turned the lock, like sealing away evidence. Danielle didn't flinch. She took out her phone and dialed a single number. A woman's voice answered instantly. "Yes? It's happening," Danielle said calmly. On the other end, Melissa Cheng, her executive assistant, responded, "System is ready, awaiting your command." From a shadowed corner, Leah Santos, the new intern, watched quietly. The young Latina had seen the name Danielle Monroe dozens of times in the training materials. She knew this wasn't just another guest. This woman was the founder, the one who built the entire retreat. Leah took a tentative step toward the desk, but Travis snapped sharply. "Back to your station, Leah. This is being handled." Handled. Danielle had heard that word before. At 24, she'd once arrived at a small hotel in Atlanta after a red-eye flight. Dressed plainly, hair a mess. Reservation confirmed. The man at the desk had looked her over and said, "You don't look like someone who stays here." They claimed a system error, told her to come back in the morning. She slept in her car, and that morning she scribbled the first lines of the Monroe Retreat's plan on a diner napkin. Now in a place she built, she was again doubted for how she looked, and she chose not to react, at least not yet. She spoke into the phone again. "Melissa, begin the log. I want every second recorded from this moment forward." "Logging now," Melissa replied. Travis leaned in, voice lowered this time. "Listen, I don't know where you got this card, but we don't tolerate scams here. We maintain high standards. You understand?" Danielle asked. "Do you say that to all your guests? Or just to me?" Travis flushed slightly. "Don't make this about race," he blurted, then immediately realized his mistake. A few nearby guests looked up. A woman near the coffee bar began raising her phone higher. Danielle whispered, "Melissa, mark that. Timestamp it." Brian, the one recording, stepped closer. "She gave you a card, gave you ID, didn't cause any scene. This isn't how front desks treat people where I come from." "Sir, please step aside," Travis waved him off. But it was already too late. The tone in the lobby had shifted, and Danielle Monroe, still standing, calm and composed, had yet to truly begin. The safe sat silently behind the counter like an indifferent witness. That cold steel box, meant to secure valuables, had suddenly become the symbol of a mistake, slowly stamping its own quiet destruction across an entire system. And the moment the black card was placed inside, the dry click that followed sounded less like security and more like a door slamming shut between truth and prejudice. Miguel froze for a few seconds after locking the safe. He didn't fully understand what was going on, but something in his gut told him he'd just done something wrong. Amber felt no such hesitation. She folded her arms, lifted her chin slightly, and stared at Danielle as if she were a particularly inconvenient glitch. "We followed protocol," Amber said. "All suspicious transactions must be reviewed." Danielle didn't respond. She stared at the safe, not as if demanding her card back, but as if wondering how long it would hold before truth shattered the thick, cold metal. She picked up her phone again, this time turning on the speaker. Melissa's voice rang out clearly. "Log is active. The entire incident since the card was confiscated is being recorded." Brian, still filming, whispered, "People need to see this. She's not yelling, not arguing. She's just standing there." Guests began to gather, not out of idle curiosity, but because of the unease now radiating through every square foot of the lobby. Leah, still behind the counter, no longer tried to hide her discomfort. She had seen that name, Monroe, in the internal system earlier that morning. The words executive owner level, priority clearance had flashed clearly during her first shift. But she hadn't said anything. She hadn't dared. Travis turned to Miguel, his voice louder now. "No one returns that card to her unless the bank confirms it. Got it?" Miguel nodded, but his eyes wandered back to Danielle. For the first time that day, he felt unsure about the order he'd received. Danielle looked at Travis, then asked gently, "If that card belonged to a white man in a suit, would you have confiscated it without verifying first?" Travis scoffed. "Don't drag me into moral games. I follow policy. You walked in unverified and caused a scene." Danielle said nothing, not a word. She stood there with her hands clasped calmly in front of her, as if waiting for someone to fall into the very trap they set themselves. An older woman seated in the lounge whispered, "She hasn't done anything. Why are they treating her like that?" A man in a white shirt, rolling a suitcase, turned to his wife. "She seems to know exactly what she's doing." Just as the tension stretched tight like a fraying violin string, Leah suddenly spoke, her voice shaky but clear. Her name? It's in the system. I saw it during my morning shift. It really is Monroe, and it really is the presidential suite. Amber whipped around. What did you just say? Her voice was sharper than ever. Leah shrank back, eyes darting between Travis, Danielle, and the floor, almost wishing it would swallow her whole. I, I'm just telling the truth. Travis stepped toward Leah. One more word and you won't need to show up for your next shift. Danielle gently turned to her phone. Melissa, log the moment Leah confirmed the system information, and log the moment she was threatened for telling the truth. Marked, Melissa replied. Her tone was flat, emotionless. But that very lack of emotion sent a chill through the room. Amber stepped out from behind the desk and walked toward Danielle. She narrowed her eyes, her voice now laced with threat. I'm going to have to ask you to leave the hotel if you continue causing a disruption. Danielle didn't move. Are you planning to put your hands on me? Amber didn't answer, but in a fleeting moment, her hand lifted. Just a small motion, not yet touching, but enough for Brian to shout from across the lobby, Don't do it, I'm filming this. At the same time, a couple live streaming on Facebook whispered, Did you see that? They're trying to throw out someone whose name is literally in the system, and she hasn't even raised her voice. Miguel was starting to feel like he was on the wrong side of the line. He glanced at Leah. She was trembling but still holding her ground. Danielle stood tall, unshaken. She turned to Miguel and spoke a sentence so quiet, yet louder than any accusation. You'll remember this moment, when you had the chance to choose what's right or stand with silence. Travis stepped forward again, voice rising now. I'm done. You are not permitted here. You're suspected of fraud. Your card is being held. Security. Miguel didn't move. Danielle raised her phone once more. Melissa, initiate protocol level 2. Run access checks on Travis Klein, Amber Wells, and Miguel Reyes. I want the identity verification system report in 2 minutes. Melissa replied, verifying. System syncing now. Do you want me to call Carla? Danielle answered, not yet. I want to see one more action from their side. By now, the atmosphere in the lobby had completely changed. No longer vague suspicion. Something was about to erupt. The truth, though unspoken, was already flickering in the guests' eyes. No one knew exactly who she was, but everyone could see one thing clearly. She wasn't afraid. And as Travis continued barking orders, Leah wrestled with fear and conscience, and Amber prepared to summon security again. Danielle stood, steady as a storm waiting to land. Everyone knew the storm was coming, and that safe wouldn't be thick enough to lock the truth away for much longer. Miguel stood by the safe, his eyes shifting between Danielle and Travis, as if waiting for a clearer signal to decide which side he belonged to. Travis wasn't waiting anymore. He had already crossed the point of no return, and like a ship charging toward the rocks while insisting it was on course, he issued his next command with the loud, hollow authority of someone clinging to control. You are suspected of using an invalid credit card. I've notified operations. If you don't leave immediately, we'll have to call the police. Danielle didn't move. Not a shift of the body, not a change in tone. She stood exactly where she was, the front desk now a border, unseen but undeniable, dividing two worlds, one of appearance and false power, the other of truth, waiting for its moment to emerge. She raised the phone to her ear, not to call Melissa this time, but a different number, the only one in her contacts that only she was allowed to use. On the other end, it rang once, and then a calm female voice answered. Yes, Ms. Monroe Danielle didn't introduce herself. She didn't need to. She spoke slowly, as if reading a line of code that the entire system had been waiting for. Activate Level 3. I want full access review of the Solara Bay Resort Management Team. Initiate a personnel status audit for Travis Klein, Amber Wells, and Miguel Reyes. I want their internal access status on my dashboard within 90 seconds. Received, the woman replied. This is Carla Bennett, Senior HR Division. Authorization signals are being dispatched now. Danielle ended the call without another word. She turned toward Travis, who now instinctively stepped backward behind the counter, as if physical distance could protect him from the unraveling already taking place in his mind. Amber was desperately trying to log into the management interface, but her credentials failed. Once, then twice. Then the system froze with a red warning flashing, "Account suspended. Pending administrative override." Leah still hadn't left her post. Her heart was pounding, but her eyes were no longer full of fear. Something about the way Danielle remained still, without retreating, without overreacting, turned the entire event into a quiet but haunting symphony. Truth didn't need to scream, it only needed the right moment. Brian, still filming, leaned toward his companion monitoring the live stream. "Over 300 people are watching, it's blowing up." A middle-aged guest in a white linen shirt turned to his wife. "Who do you think she is?" His wife replied softly, "I don't know, but I think they're about to find out." And then it happened. A distinct ping echoed from the front desk computer. Leah glanced at the screen, hesitant to touch it, but the orange alert had already appeared. "Internal verification request from System CEO, Danielle Monroe, emergency control activated." Travis stared at the screen, then at Leah, then finally at Danielle, like it was the first time he truly felt fear. "What is this?" he asked, but no one answered. Amber snatched up the phone, trying to call tech support, but the voice on the other end replied, "I'm sorry. Your administrative account is currently suspended under executive-level directive. We are unable to assist further." Miguel looked at the safe, then back at Danielle. "Your card, it's real, isn't it?" Danielle nodded. No explanation needed, no persuasion. Just one nod, and the entire room seemed to shift in her direction. At that moment, Carla Bennett called back. Danielle put the phone on speaker. "Ms. Monroe, all 3 employees' access privileges have been suspended. The system confirms. Travis Klein has received 3 internal warnings over the past 6 months for inappropriate behavior toward guests. Amber Wells has 2 reports filed for unprofessional conduct. Miguel Reyes has no disciplinary record, but is linked to 2 prior incidents of similar nature. What would you like the next step to be?" Danielle didn't respond immediately. She looked around the lobby. Guests had clustered into small groups. No one was leaving. Some were whispering. Many were recording. And then, in a voice low and steady, she said, "I want them to know the truth, not to punish them, but to stop a chain of systemic mistakes." Travis opened his mouth. "Why didn't you say so earlier? Why didn't you tell us you were the owner?" Danielle answered, unwavering. "Because I wanted to see what would happen if I didn't." In that moment, the entire lobby seemed to hold its breath. Miguel quietly stepped away from the safe. Amber lowered her phone. Leah stood a little straighter. Carla continued through the speaker. "We're prepared to initiate disciplinary action if you'd like to proceed." Danielle said just one sentence. "Not yet. I want them to witness a little more." Because the first phone call was only the beginning. Leah stood frozen behind the reception desk, her eyes locked on the computer screen still blinking with alerts from the highest tier internal system. The red text screamed into the silence of the lobby. "CEO override confirmed. Danielle Monroe. Full system authority engaged." Travis took a step back, his gaze sweeping across each word before landing on the woman in front of him. The same woman he had smugly dismissed as out of place just moments ago. Amber was different. She didn't look at the screen. She didn't look at anyone. Her head hung low, as if she wished the floor might open up and swallow her to shield her from the waves of judgment crashing in from all directions. Danielle remained standing, unmoved, not picking up the phone, not saying a word. She let the silence stretch a few seconds longer, not passive silence, but purposeful, as if she were giving those still sitting on old assumptions one last chance to realize the truth had been among them all along. A middle-aged woman in a floral scarf whispered to the person beside her, "Who is she? How can she shake an entire system with one call?" Brian, still live streaming, slowly turned his camera toward Danielle, then back to his audience on screen. "You're witnessing something big right now. She might be the owner of this place, or maybe something more." Leah swallowed hard, then turned to Danielle, her voice low and confessional. "Your name was in the system. This morning I saw the tag owner clearance, but I wasn't sure. I didn't think." Danielle nodded, not angry, not blaming. You saw, and you spoke up. That's enough. Just then, the landline at the reception rang, its sharp tone startling Amber. Leah hesitated, then picked it up. Her voice was soft. Hello, this is Solara Bay front desk. She paused, listening, her expression shifting from surprise to shock. Hanging up slowly, she turned to the room. That was the communications office from headquarters. They asked if Ms. Monroe is on site, and if so, they want immediate identity confirmation. Travis let out a nervous chuckle, forced and shaky. Well, that's good. We need to verify. She still hasn't proved who she is. She could be impersonating. A nearby guest interrupted with a calm but cutting question. And what if she really is the owner? Travis opened his mouth but had no answer. Danielle didn't look at him. She turned to Leah and asked gently, Are you still logged into the front desk system? Leah nodded. Good. Pull up my reservation. Use the ID I gave earlier. Name, Monroe. Danielle Monroe. Leah typed quickly, and within seconds the information appeared. First line, Danielle Monroe. Below that, penthouse oceanfront suite, owner access. At the bottom in bold red system code, executive override, no ID required, full clearance. Leah read aloud, her voice just loud enough to carry. She doesn't just have a reservation, she has ownership access. System confirms highest clearance. Whispers erupted across the lobby. A man in a light blue shirt turned slowly to his wife, voice somber. We just watched a CEO get treated like a stranger inside her own property. A young mother holding her baby near the window gasped, I can't believe this is real, but it is. I saw it happen. Danielle slowly turned to Travis. She didn't scold him. She didn't raise her voice. She simply said, I gave you the chance to treat me like any other guest. Not because I'm the CEO, not because I'm the owner, but because I'm a human being. Amber stepped back, lips trembling. I didn't know. Danielle didn't look at her. She looked at Leah. Print the full system confirmation. Include the timestamp and the last user access log. We're going to need that. Leah nodded and began printing. Carla Bennett called back. Danielle didn't speak first. Carla was already ready. Our communications team is getting flagged on all social platforms. We're being tagged nonstop. Do you want me to release an official statement? Danielle responded calmly. Not yet. Let them see it first. Not in words, in truth. Brian turned back to the camera, whispering as if speaking to thousands of silent viewers. You see that? No yelling, no slamming fists. Just standing, like she is, and letting an entire system reveal what it's been hiding for too long. Miguel, no longer defensive or stern, quietly stepped away from the safe. He bowed his head and spoke softly. I'm sorry. I didn't know. If I had. Danielle looked at him. For the first time she smiled. Small, restrained, but genuine. You don't need to know who I am. You just need to know how to treat someone when you don't know who they are. That's what matters. The printer buzzed. Leah handed the confirmation to Danielle. She didn't keep it to herself. She laid it flat on the counter, fully visible to Travis, Amber, and the surrounding onlookers. It was all there. The name, the ownership, the system access, emergency annotations. Every line of data was irrefutable. A guest behind Brian spoke aloud. I hope this is all being recorded. My child needs to see this one day, to understand that respect doesn't come from clothes or wallets, but from how you treat others, no matter who they are. Danielle turned to Leah, speaking gently like a teacher. Do you see any internal reports flagged about discriminatory guest treatment? Leah checked the side panel, scanning quickly. There are 3. A month ago, an Asian woman was denied check-in because she didn't match her passport photo. 2 weeks ago, an elderly black man was downgraded from a luxury suite. And most recently, a couple was denied a room due to questionable documentation. Danielle nodded. 3 incidents. And did anyone here? She looked at Travis and Amber. Respond to them? No answer. Danielle picked up the documents and faced the crowd. I'm Danielle Monroe. I'm the founder and CEO of Monroe Retreats, including Solara Bay Resort. I stood here for almost an hour, and no one asked who I was. because I didn't look like who they think deserves service. No one in the lobby moved. No one spoke. Every eye, every phone camera was on the woman in the black blouse and jeans, using stillness to dismantle a system built on habits and assumptions. The question, who is she, no longer needed answering. The only question left was, what will we do now that we know who she is? Danielle's final sentence, brief without need for explanation, still hung in the air like a thin veil of mist. I stood here for almost an hour, and no one asked who I was, simply because I didn't look like someone they thought deserved to be served. Those words didn't ring like a bell, but they landed like an anchor at the bottom of every heart in that room. No one responded, but this silence was no longer complicit. It was reflection. It was the quiet rupture of long-denied truths. A man near the front desk, an older professional with silver hair and reading glasses, adjusted the strap of his leather messenger bag and stepped forward half a pace. He didn't clear his throat or give his name. He simply spoke as if closing a file that should never have been opened. I was denied service here once. Not because of a system error, but because I asked too many questions, even though I booked a month in advance. They left me standing here for nearly an hour without looking me in the eye. Today I know why. Silence returned, but now it had shape. It was the sound of memories resurfacing. A young woman holding a baby whispered, "I was once asked to prove I was the real mother of this child at another hotel. They thought I was a nanny. Because I'm brown and my baby is light. I never told anyone." Brian turned his camera toward her, not zooming, not commenting, just letting the image speak. Then he slowly panned back to Danielle and murmured, "You don't need to shout. People are listening." Danielle turned to Leah, still holding the printed verification. She spoke slowly and clearly. "I want you to temporarily oversee all front desk operations from this moment forward. I'll handle logistics, but this lobby needs someone who listens, not just someone who logs things." Leah's eyes widened. "Me? But I'm just an intern." "You're the only one who didn't lie," Danielle replied with not a flicker of doubt in her gaze. "And in moments like this, that's more than enough to begin." Amber opened her mouth, perhaps to object, but before she could speak, Leah had already turned the monitor toward Danielle and said, "System confirms I'm the only one still with login privileges. I can manage the interface temporarily." Danielle nodded, not with a formal order, just a nod, and the energy in the room shifted. A man in a blue button-down shirt raised his hand and said, "If there's anything I can do to help stabilize the situation, I'm willing. I'm not staff, but I can't just stand by and watch a woman be treated like this in the very place she built." An elderly woman, the same one who had first spoken up at the beginning, stepped forward, laid a hand on the counter, and said softly, "They ignored me when I complained about being called the wrong name 3 nights in a row. I thought it was a small mistake. Today I understand. It wasn't a mistake. It was attitude." Support rippled gently across the lobby like waves brushing the shore. No one screamed. No one stormed out. But in the way they stepped toward Danielle, in the way they stepped out of the silence, they were choosing a side. Danielle turned to look at Travis, now no longer the man behind the desk, but a man standing at the edge of a crater he dug himself. He stepped back again, lips moving without sound, no longer able to summon the usual answers from the system he once used as a shield. Amber stood tucked behind the counter, clutching its edge, eyes clouded with shame and confusion. Miguel didn't look away, but he couldn't meet anyone's eyes. He breathed slowly, swallowing hard. Carla called again. Danielle answered, her tone steady as ever. "I'm here." Carla's voice was urgent. "The news is spreading. Local outlets have received video. Social media is blowing up. Do you want us to release a statement from headquarters?" Danielle paused for a few seconds, then said, "No. Let the people here speak first. They deserve to be heard." She ended the call, then turned to the gathering crowd. "I can't undo what happened, but I can ensure that from today forward, no one walks into this place needing to prove they deserve to be treated with dignity." There was no need for applause, but a young man wearing a backpack began clapping, slowly, deliberately, then another. Then the entire lobby, not loud, not random, but as if it were a quiet consensus, rising. Those claps weren't for status, not for authority, but for something that had been missing too long in a place that should have been filled with it. Respect. Danielle turned to Leah. Suspend all new check-ins for the next hour. Anyone with existing reservations will be transferred to our partner resort with complimentary transportation. You have temporary authority to issue notifications as acting lead. Leah asked quietly. What about those affected today? Danielle answered, I'll call them personally, not PR me. The one who built this place should be the one to take responsibility when it fails. Miguel finally spoke, voice low but genuine. You didn't fail. We did. Danielle looked at him, no judgment in her eyes. You still have time to stand on the right side. Miguel nodded softly. I'd like to work through the end of the day. After that, I'll accept whatever consequence comes. Danielle looked at Leah. Noted. Send the report to Carla. Then she turned to those still watching. I don't need apologies. I just need those who stayed silent to understand. Every time you look away, a mistake gets reinforced. But every time you stop, a system starts to shake. No one replied, but no one walked away. And sometimes the most powerful call to action is when no one moves. On the front desk monitor, Danielle Monroe's name still glowed brightly in the system's control panel. The words executive owner, override access, active, shimmered like a key that had been hidden away for years, intentionally misplaced. And now, under the weight of a silent, collective reckoning in the hotel lobby, it began unlocking doors no one ever thought would be opened. Leah touched the keyboard, her fingers trembling but decisive. She wasn't following orders. She was carrying out something she believed in. Danielle stood beside her, giving no commands, offering no urgency, only watching with the eyes of someone who understood that real change, if it's meant to last, must come from those willing to own it. Temporarily suspend access privileges for Travis Klein, Amber Wells, and Miguel Reyes, Danielle said calmly, with neither anger nor compromise. Leah asked, what level? Danielle replied, full. Not just system login, data vaults, internal offices, safes. Preserve their records. Do not delete anything. Everything must be audited. Leah typed the commands. A confirmation prompt appeared. She pressed OK. One simple click, and the power those individuals had clung to for years dissolved in less than 3 seconds. The safe that had locked away Danielle's black card no longer belonged to anyone but her and Leah. Danielle glanced at Miguel, who was still standing, eyes downcast. He didn't plead. He didn't flee. He only spoke a single heavy sentence, almost like a confession. I wasn't the one in charge, but I followed along. I didn't resist, but I also didn't take a stand. Danielle looked directly at him, not accusing, but not comforting either. You knew my name. You knew I was the owner, but you didn't use that name to stand up for me. And sometimes silence is a key too, a key that locks away the chances others deserve. Miguel lowered his head. Leah whispered, access has been suspended. System has logged the action. At the same time, Brian, still filming, spoke softly to the livestream. We just witnessed a simple act with revolutionary weight. A CEO just revoked wrongful authority, not with outrage, but with legal, transparent commands. An older woman beside him added, more to herself than anyone else, a name, when recognized for what it truly is, can be a weapon stronger than any title. Amber slumped behind the counter, eyes blank. She mumbled something indistinct. Danielle turned to her. If you have something to say it now. No one here is being forced to remain silent anymore. Amber looked up, voice dry and brittle. I used to think I was just following company culture, that this was the standard, that assuming someone didn't belong because they weren't dressed correctly was part of protecting the brand's image. Danielle replied, and you were wrong, not because you didn't know, but because you never questioned who wrote those standards and who they serve. Travis no longer looked up. He stood tucked in a corner, clutching his ID badge like it was the last thread tying him to who he used to be. Danielle turned to Carla on the phone. Log every system access from the last 6 months. I want to know how many complaints were buried, how many requests were ignored, and who signed them off. Carla replied, already pulling the logs. I've also found at least 9 customer reports flagged, handled internally, but there are no closure records. Danielle turned to Leah. Are you willing to oversee the transition period? Leah bit her lip, then nodded. Danielle said gently, not because you're the most qualified, but because you were the first to speak up, even when you weren't sure anyone would stand with you. And this place needs people like that to be rebuilt. Leah, holding back tears, said, I didn't expect this. I just thought if I didn't say something, no one would know who you were. Danielle smiled. And if no one knows my name, then how they treat me shows exactly who they are. A young guest stepped forward, handing Leah a handwritten note. This is my name and how I felt about the service today. If you need proof that people here still believe in justice, I'm willing to sign it. Another nearby guest added, I filed a complaint last year and was ignored, but I stayed loyal to Monroe because I believed in the brand. Today I know I wasn't wrong to believe in that name. Danielle quietly pulled out her personal key and walked to the safe. She asked no one, waited for no one. She simply entered the code, turned it 4 times to the right. A soft click echoed. She opened the steel door. The black card lay untouched inside. She didn't raise it like a trophy. She simply placed it back in her wallet, as if no one had ever stolen her identity. But everyone understood. That small, unceremonious action marked the final collapse of the illusion Travis and Amber had long constructed. Danielle turned to Leah. I want a full audit of Solera Bay operations from the past 3 years. Sync our system with an external ethics review board. Any patterns of exclusion, discrimination, or client distrust must be made public. Leah nodded. Carla added, I'm ready to issue the structural reform order. All managerial positions will be suspended pending investigation. Danielle responded, no suspensions, make it public. Anyone removed from the system today should walk out through the front doors, among the very people they once chose not to see. The air in the lobby grew tense. Travis finally raised his head, pale as ash. You're going to humiliate us? Danielle shook her head. Number, I'm reminding you that what you once considered normal is now the very reason you've lost everything. And if that brings someone shame, it's not because of me. It's because they never felt shame doing the wrong thing. Brian turned the camera toward himself and addressed his audience. And that is how a system changes. Not through scandal, but by placing every crooked brick on the table for all to see. One name, one key, one deliberate action, but the consequences. No one could look away from them anymore. The safe had been opened, access revoked, and the once dismissed name was now printed across every official report with full recognition. But what truly shifted the course of Solera Bay wasn't the keystrokes or the system banners blinking on a screen. The irreversible crack came when those who had stayed silent, for fear, for doubt, for believing their words didn't matter, finally began to speak. A poised, middle-aged white woman stepped out from the seating area near the window. She looked at no one but Danielle. Her voice was soft but steady. 4 months ago, I brought my mother, she's 84, for a weekend here. I clearly noted in the booking that she needed a room near the elevator. No steps because she's in a wheelchair. When we arrived, they put us on the 3rd floor, at the far end of the hallway, and told me, that's the only room left. I asked, I begged. And the man at the desk, Travis, told me, other guests have needs too. Your mother isn't special. I let it go at the time, but today I wish I hadn't. Danielle nodded. What's your name? She asked. The woman replied, Margaret Whitmore. Danielle turned to Leah. Check the lodging record under Whitmore. If there's any violation, I want an official apology, a full refund, and a written commitment to corrective measures. Leah nodded, but Margaret gently shook her head. I don't need compensation. I just need to know that people like my mother won't be seen as an inconvenience anymore. A housekeeper in a brown uniform stepped out from the left hallway. He looked to be about 30, Latino, still holding a cleaning cloth. He hesitated, then found his voice. I'm Ernesto. I've worked here 6 years. I've never met you, Ms. Monroe, but I saw Travis berate staff in front of guests. He called older workers slow as turtles, called the kitchen assistant a guy who doesn't speak English. I didn't say anything because I was afraid of being transferred, but I'm speaking now because I don't want my daughter growing up thinking silence is the way to keep a job. Danielle turned to him. You won't be transferred. You will be heard. Leah was already writing down names, times, and statements. Every word spoken today wasn't just acknowledged. It was being preserved as part of a reckoning. Another guest, a man of Asian descent, wearing a checked shirt and a smart watch, stepped forward. I booked a room here in January. At check-in, I handed over my company card, and they laughed and said, "Are you sure you can afford to stay here?" They thought I didn't understand English. I understood every word. I said nothing. I went to my room, called our corporate event planner, and told them to move all future conferences elsewhere. I never said why, but today I know I should have. Danielle said, "If you can confirm the transaction details, I'll have our complaint unit track it down. If needed, I'll personally call every conference that was moved to explain." The man shook his head. "You don't have to. Just make sure no one else hears that question again. Especially not my son. He's in college here. Someday he'll walk into this hotel. I want him welcomed, not questioned." A former barback, who had been walking past, paused, turned back, and returned to the crowd. He looked about 25, with cropped hair, a worn black t-shirt, and a Spanish tattoo on his left forearm. "I used to work nights at the pool bar. Travis once told me, 'Don't spend too much time serving table 9. It's for regulars.' Then he said, 'Don't bother talking to the black guy. They don't tip anyway.'" I didn't react. I just switched shifts. But now I realize I let something wrong become normal. Danielle asked, "Do you still work here?" He shook his head. "I quit 2 months ago. Couldn't take the culture anymore. But I came back, not for a job, but to confirm what people are saying is true." Danielle turned to Leah. "Create a special section. Statements from former staff. Anyone who left because of a toxic environment deserves to be recorded." Leah, "On it." Carla's voice came through the phone. "We've received 7 guest statements via email in the last 30 minutes. All confirm experiences of being ignored, dismissed, or denied service without explanation. Media is starting to contact past guests." Danielle responded with only one sentence. "Good. Let every unspoken word be spoken today." At that moment, Miguel stepped forward, quietly taking a place beside Danielle. No one asked him to. No one expected him to. But he knew, if he didn't speak now, he wouldn't deserve to stand in this space again. "I was part of the system that allowed these things to happen. I never punished anyone, but I never protected anyone either. I stayed silent to preserve my position. Today, I no longer have that position, and I don't want to keep that silence anymore." Danielle replied softly, "You won't be punished for speaking, but if you choose to return to silence, that's the punishment you give yourself." A young woman stepped forward, wearing the uniform of a housekeeper, unclear if she was from the morning or evening shift. "Gloves still on," she said. "I just want to say something. When I was cleaning on the 8th floor last month, I found a complaint envelope in the trash, still sealed. It read, 'Do not address. Owner doesn't need to know about this.' I don't know who threw it out, but I never heard anyone say it was wrong." Danielle nodded. "You're the first to say it out loud. And because of you, we won't be throwing anything away anymore." The entire lobby was shifting. No one shouted. No one protested. But everyone was choosing. The voices that had once been silenced, by pressure, by fear, by loyalty to what they were told was procedure, were becoming the first winds of reform. Danielle didn't need to command anything. She only needed to listen. And sometimes that is the greatest power there is. The system was still running. Lines of data continued to scroll across the internal control monitor like a machine long hidden, now dismantled and forced to reveal everything it had devoured. Leah sat behind the desk, eyes fixed on the personnel dashboard, where red indicators lit up blind spots in management. Uncovered shifts, complaints never marked resolved, internal reply emails never even opened. Danielle stood beside her, not stooping to micromanage, not rushing through details. She simply watched, with the calm of someone who no longer cared how tangled the knots were, only where they needed to be cut first. Carla Bennett called back just as Leah was extracting the monthly complaint summary file. Her voice was firm, never frantic. "We just discovered a legacy folder in the old system, unlinked from the CRM. It's labeled Deferred Guests. There are 74 total complaints from the past year, all marked handled internally, yet not a single one has an official resolution. And notably, every sender has a non-Western surname. Danielle's voice dropped, steady. Send the list to the ops board. Flag them for priority outreach. I want every name contacted within 48 hours. No auto-responses, no templates. A real person calls, apologizes, and listens. Leah's eyes widened at the screen. Look at this. In the VIP guest approval section, almost every approval was signed off by Travis. But the ones marked ineligible overwhelmingly belonged to people with Latin, Asian, or African names. Danielle asked slowly, "Is there any system-logged reason for those rejections?" Leah shook her head. "None. The internal notes field is blank. Just a denied stamp and Travis's digital signature." Danielle turned to the lobby, where the once silent crowd still stood. Not one had left. Her voice was calm but carried. "We've started exposing what the quarterly reports never mentioned. And the truth is, some actions are never officially recorded because the people with the power to write them down chose to remain silent." A woman near the check-in counter raised her hand hesitantly. "Ms. Monroe, if I told you I once filed a complaint and never heard back, would I be heard now?" Danielle stepped closer without hesitation. "You don't need permission. You just need to speak." The woman nodded, eyes glistening. "I'm a regular guest here. I once submitted a lengthy complaint after my husband was yelled at by staff for sitting at a table reserved for elite members. But we had a reservation. I sent a letter, called 3 times. No one responded. I started to think maybe I was overreacting." Danielle shook her head. "You weren't too sensitive. They were too indifferent." Carla's voice returned over the phone. "I also just verified. There are at least 4 staff who disappeared from the system with no formal resignation. One of them was a black manager, Marcus Baines, who used to oversee restaurant operations. His file says terminated for not aligning with brand culture. But there's no documentation to support it." Danielle responded, "Find Marcus. If he's willing, let him speak to the entire team." Leah added softly, "Danielle, Marcus trained me during my first week. He was strict but fair. I never saw him raise his voice. Then one day, he was just gone. No one ever said why." Danielle nodded. "And that's the problem. When the ones doing it right disappear without a word, and the ones doing harm are kept because they know how the system works, then that system is broken at its root." Leah returned to the screen, pulling archived employee files. She murmured, mostly to herself, "We let names be deleted without ever asking why they were erased." Meanwhile, Brian, still recording, whispered to his companion, "She's not just restoring brand reputation. She's peeling back layers of the system, exposing wounds that were never meant to see light." A small frame technician had just come on shift. His badge read Jasper, and he approached, toolkit in hand. "I was once told to disconnect the hallway cameras behind the staff area, where guests and staff sometimes argued. The reason? Reducing unnecessary data load. So I did. But now, I know it was wrong. If those cameras had stayed, we wouldn't need statements. The footage would speak." Danielle looked at him. "Do you still have a backup?" Jasper nodded. "I kept an uncompressed copy on a personal drive, just in case. I had a feeling this day might come." Danielle replied, "Our legal team will contact you. And thank you for keeping what others tried to erase." An older parking attendant raised his hand from the far end of the room. "I once overheard Amber say to a guest, 'You must be in the wrong resort, ma'am. Our top-tier rooms aren't for everyone.' That guest might have been you," Danielle responded without spite. "And today I'm here to finally hear the words I was once denied." The files were being opened. The data was being restored. Acts that once slipped off the radar were now lit up like spotlights beaming straight into everyone's conscience. There was no more room for denial, and no more excuse for silence. Leah stood and spoke clearly. "We used to think this system only needed a few process fixes. But the truth is, it's not about the forms. It's about the people, about how they're kept, promoted, or discarded. simply because they don't fit someone's imagined mold. Danielle placed a hand on Leah's shoulder, steady and firm. And now the first thing we must do is rewrite what was left out of the reports. Not to shame anyone, but to ensure it's never repeated. The things the reports never said are now the only things that must be written, line by line. Nearly 2 hours had passed since Danielle Monroe stepped into the lobby of Solera Bay Resort, yet no one had left. Not a single person. The guests who were once curious now stood in small clusters, talking, recording, with live streams still active on 3 different platforms. And Leah, the young receptionist once scolded by Amber, had become an anchor for those who, for the first time, dared to speak what they had once chosen to suppress. Travis had been escorted out by security. So had Amber. Miguel wasn't fired, but he had been asked to step away from his role, pending investigation. No one was humiliated. No one was shamed. What was happening was something else entirely. Order, built for the first time on trust rather than fear, was being restored. Danielle walked up to the guest services desk. She held a tablet Leah had just handed her, containing all personnel reports and urgent adjustment proposals. Carla Bennett appeared in the lobby without announcement. Wearing a crisp navy suit and a calm, steady gaze, she represented the senior HR division, but arrived without security, without a single document folder. "I came because you called," she said, "but I'm staying because of what I'm seeing." Danielle nodded. "I need immediate on-site confirmation to act today. No committees, no delays, no, we'll review it later." Carla answered firmly, "You have full authority." Danielle turned the tablet toward Leah. "I recommend Leah Morris be appointed as interim front desk operations supervisor for a term of 3 months, with full authority to manage staffing, shift coordination, complaint resolution, and frontline service evaluations." Leah stood stunned, as if frozen. Danielle didn't smile. She simply looked Leah in the eye and said clearly, "Not because you're perfect, but because you're the only one in this entire property who looked injustice in the face and didn't turn away." Carla nodded. "Acknowledged. I'll send the official personnel appointment within 24 hours. In the meantime, Leah Morris has full interim authority, effective immediately." A wave of applause broke out from the guest area. A black couple who had been quietly observing now nodded with warm approval. A housekeeping staff member rolled her supply card up to the desk, stopped, pulled out a small envelope, and placed it silently on the counter, then walked away without a word. Leah picked it up and opened it. Inside was a handwritten note. "They never gave me the chance to speak. Thank you for listening." Danielle turned to Carla. "And here's the list of people whose contracts I want reevaluated, not by template, by true value. Jasper, maintenance. Miss Elsa, childcare. Marvin, sous chef, and especially Marcus Baines, the man who was removed for cultural misalignment. I want him back as lead consultant for our guest experience strategy." Carla marked each name. "I'll handle it directly, and I want to meet Marcus myself." Danielle turned back to Leah. "Tomorrow you and I will rewrite the entire VIP guest approval process. No more name filtering. No more silent rejections without justification." Leah hesitated. "Danielle, I don't even know where to begin." Danielle didn't answer with words. She unpinned the small badge from her shirt. No name, no title, just a gold key emblem. She placed it on the desk in front of Leah. "Starting today, this key is yours. Not to open a safe, but to open the doors that have been closed to people like you for far too long." Leah picked it up, hands trembling, but no tears fell from her eyes. Carla turned to Danielle. "You didn't just change a role. You've changed the way this system understands power." Danielle's voice was steady. "We've been wrong for too long. We thought power belonged to the loudest voice, but it doesn't. It belongs to the one who listens. At the right time." Carla smiled. "The new kind of power doesn't wear a suit, doesn't need a business card, and doesn't wait for recognition from the old system, because it's already building a new one." Danielle stepped away from the desk, facing the guests who still remain. Her voice rose, not sharply but clearly. "To anyone who was ever denied service without explanation, today I apologize. To those who filed complaints and never heard back, I promise someone will call." To those who stayed silent thinking they had no voice, today we want to listen. An elderly woman in an olive dress, eyes misty, spoke up. I was once denied a room here because a staff member told me I'd wandered into the wrong section. I didn't think I'd live to see someone like you stand here and say what you just did. Danielle approached her gently. Today isn't about me speaking. It's about giving back the right to speak to everyone who was ever robbed of it. Leah whispered, just loud enough. This isn't just a leadership change. This is the first time I've seen a hotel truly listen. The press began to arrive, but not with intrusive cameras and faces. Instead, with a single question. What just happened at Solera Bay that made guests refuse to leave the lobby? Danielle didn't need to give a statement. They only had to watch Leah guiding a team of young employees through the revised service policies. Watch a janitor walk through the lobby, not with bowed head, but with quiet ownership, as if the space finally belonged to him too. Watch how power moved, not through shouting, but through quiet action. Because sometimes real power doesn't wear a suit. It wears a uniform. It carries a faded name tag. It walks softly. But when it finally stands tall, everyone knows. This is who should have been in charge all along. At exactly 6:47 p.m., the final rays of sunlight filtered into the grand lobby of Solera Bay Resort. But within the golden hues reflecting off the glass walls, there was no heaviness lingering in the air. The whispers and tense murmurs from earlier had dissolved into farewells, thank yous, and even quiet smiles. Smiles that even the staff themselves hadn't believed they'd be able to manage after a day like today. Danielle Monroe was no longer at the center of it all. She didn't need to be. She now sat at a small side table near the glass entrance, alongside Carla Bennett and Leah Morris, signing off on temporary transition documents, reviewing urgent tasks that needed immediate execution before her departure. This time, for good. No press conference? Carla asked, a trace of professional curiosity in her voice. Danielle shook her head gently, her tone calm. What for? Real change doesn't need to be announced. It needs to be continued. Tomorrow and the day after that. Carla nodded in agreement. And when Leah leads her first team meeting tomorrow morning, that will speak louder than any statement on live television. Leah remained quiet, carefully straightening the temporary nameplate Carla had given her. Leah Morris, Supervisor, Interim. A simple tag, white background, black lettering. But in Leah's eyes, it was a whole new kind of power. One that didn't impose, didn't need to be proven, and was passed on by someone who knew exactly what it meant to be underestimated. Danielle stood up. She didn't rush. Each step she took was met by the eyes of staff members who just hours earlier had thought this would be just another routine shift. There were no cheers, no applause, just straighter backs. Just heads no longer lowered when walking past guests. Just the kind of eye contact shared by people who had survived a storm together, not by shouting, but by getting drenched and staying anyway. Miguel stood at the end of the hallway. Though he had been suspended, he didn't leave. Not to plead for his job, but to witness. He walked up, visibly remorseful. I'm not asking to keep my position, he said. I just need to know. Do you believe I truly didn't realize how wrong things had become? Danielle looked at him, her voice neither cold nor soft. I believe you knew at least part of it, but you chose to stay silent. Miguel lowered his head. Danielle continued slowly. But you didn't walk away today. You stayed. And sometimes, those who don't run deserve a chance to make things right. Miguel let out a long sigh, as if something heavy had been lifted. I want to come back, not as a manager, just as the right kind of man. When Danielle stepped outside, the ocean breeze had picked up. She paused under the resort's awning, looking up at the large hotel sign, Solera Bay Resort, a place of distinction. She repeated the words quietly to herself, then turned to Leah. Tomorrow, work with Marvin to rewrite that slogan. Don't use the word distinction. Change it to a place where everyone deserves respect. Leah nodded without asking why. A little girl, about 8 years old, the daughter of a kitchen staff member, ran up and grabbed Danielle's hand. Are you the one in charge of this place? She asked. Danielle knelt down, smiling. I'm just the one who listened first. The girl watched as Danielle walked away. The last light of the day hit her hair, casting a soft glow. There was no escort, no one to open her door. Danielle pulled the car door open herself, stepped in, but before starting the engine, she looked into the rearview mirror. In the mirror, she saw Leah standing on the front steps. No wave, no call, but the certainty in Leah's eyes said everything that needed to be said. Danielle didn't look back again. She didn't need to, because when a system is built on the right foundation, the rest will carry itself forward. It will find its own firekeepers. People who don't wear suits, don't raise their voices the loudest, but know exactly what must be protected and what must be stopped. And when that system grows, the ones who used to shout the loudest will have nothing left to say. Solara Bay Resort never issued a press release, but the video of that entire afternoon spread across social media within 12 hours. Not because it shocked people, but because everyone saw themselves in Leah, or remembered needing someone like Danielle. One front desk worker from Michigan wrote, "I've never seen a woman in power who didn't have to prove herself. She just stood there, and all the wrong things fell away." A former hotel security guard from New Orleans commented, "I was fired once for standing up against how they treated black guests. This story makes me think, it's time we rewrite how hotels are run." Carla Bennett stayed for 3 more days. She hosted a full-staff forum, naming the initiative RE-Access, Reconnect, Reevaluate, Reaffirm Value. Leah hosted the program. Marvin, the sous chef who had once been ignored, was the first to speak. "I don't need a pat on the back for being good at my job. I just need to be heard when I speak the truth." And at the end of the 3rd day, a new plaque appeared in the lobby. Not a golden emblem, just a simple wooden sign engraved with words. "No one is judged by the clothes they wear. No one is ignored for having gentle eyes. Here, everyone is allowed to enter and to be heard." There was no signature. No one claimed credit. But everyone knew the person who left that sign was no longer here. And yet she remained. In the way people now stood taller, spoke more clearly, and believed that change doesn't come from the one who yells the loudest. It comes from the last one to stay, the one who knows how to hold the door open for others to walk through. And perhaps the most unforgettable part wasn't when she fired someone. It was the moment she didn't need to yell, didn't need to point fingers, didn't need to prove herself. Yet an entire system had to change simply because she stood there, quietly, but never small. In a world so quick to judge based on an outfit, a skin tone, or a room key, people like Danielle Monroe still choose to lead with belief, with fierce kindness, and with decisions no one sees, but everyone feels. And if you've ever been looked down on for not fitting in, if you've ever wished someone would stand up for you when you couldn't find the words, then maybe today this story wasn't just about a resort. Maybe it was about you, about how you deserve to be treated, and how you too can begin to change something, not with power, but with something far more powerful, the courage to listen. If this story made you pause for a moment, think a little deeper, or feel something stir inside, leave a comment below. We want to hear your story, or your mother's, or someone you know who endured in silence and is still waiting to be heard. And if you believe that dignity should never be decided by appearance, occupation, or background, hit that subscribe button. Stay with us, because we're not done telling stories like this. Because change doesn't start with a fist on the table. It starts with one person who refuses to stay silent.